Yeah, it's you know, of course it's not fun, and I feel bad for everyone who had gotten tickets and things, but I understand as well, and you know, everyone's just trying to like navigate this, so. As I was touring in 2018, I really started to feel like just something nagging in me that I really needed to take a break and really focus on like my mental health and my physical health and my spiritual health. And one of the ways that I was finding solace and quiet on tour and like in the midst of the chaos of it all was just taking my acoustic guitar and finding a quiet room or going to the back of the bus. And I ended up writing all these acoustic songs that started to come together, and just felt like it was time to maybe like take a little bit of a break from being on the road and just focus on making this record, and that became Birth of Violence. Yeah, I feel lucky to have been exposed to so much good music at a young age because my father was in a band, and you know, he was playing country and bluegrass and more traditional music, but he introduced me to kind of a good range of stuff, you know, from like old country like Johnny Cash and things like that to Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and stuff. So I kind of got like the metal influence at an early age as well. And then my mom also had really good taste in music and was listening to like Joni Mitchell and Bonnie Raitt all the time. I feel like the metal community has been very supportive of me from almost the beginning, really. One of my first big shows over here in Europe was playing Roadburn Festival, which is like, at first at least, seemed more predominantly like metal and just heavy music. Now I think it's expanding more into just kind of like experimental music in general. But yeah, I felt very embraced by the metal community early on, even though the music I was making definitely wasn't like inherently metal. Yeah, to be honest, I think for a long time I kind of had like my own personal like blinders up to it, just as like a survival method, you know, like I approached music and dressing and everything in my career in like a very androgynous way, and I felt like that honestly for a very long time, like kind of in between gender, and didn't really like focus more so one way or the other. I was just kind of like my own alien, you know. But as I got more into my 30s, and especially when I wrote Hiss Spun, my last record before Birth of Violence, I was embracing more so being a woman, and just honestly just started feeling more like that. I don't know if it was just part of getting older, like I said, or not, but so yeah, I started writing about that more and feeling like it was okay to have my music come from that perspective. I've always been open to other realms and to the spiritual realm, definitely from a young age, and I do think that my grandmother had a lot to do with that. I spent a fair amount of time at her house when I was a kid, after my parents divorced, and she had just gotten back from a sort of like retreat / college kind of thing up in the mountains where she learned aromatherapy and Reiki, and just had been like studying the more like, you know, metaphysical side of things, and I was instantly really interested in that, and she kind of like showed me how to, you know, create your own scents and create like tinctures and things like that. So yeah, I think that was just, it took me a long time to kind of step into my own in that realm, but just like planting that seed was really important. I had a Casio keyboard, and there was like 3 spaces that you could record songs in, or song ideas, and I recorded like a simple like 4-note piano pattern in the first track, and the second one had like some beat or something. And then one day I came home from school with an idea that I wanted to record. So I went to go do it on like the third space that was open for recording, but noticed that it already had something on it. Like you could tell because it would be like the light was flashing if there was already something recorded on it. So I just hit play, and it started with the 4 notes from like the first space for songs, if that makes sense. And then went into this like really beautiful dark version of it that like I definitely couldn't play, and nobody in my family could, because none of us are like real piano players. Like I was just always kind of messing around. And then kind of stopped and started making these sounds that I don't even think were on the keyboard, and then eventually went back around into like my original theme. So yeah, it was a really intense experience. Like I think this happens to a lot of people, but when I experience like a ghost story or something that I feel like is very real, I just like get tears coming down my face, like not crying, but just like involuntary like tears, and that was definitely happening. And I just felt like overwhelmed by this this song that had been sort of collaborated with. I think I actually kind of have like a family of musicians at this point, because each album has its own little part of that family, but people do like come in and out. Like for example, my friend Ezra Bukla, who plays viola, has played on like I think 3 of my records now, but not like right in a row. It's like just certain records. I just feel like the way he plays like from his soul would just be really good on certain songs. And again, I just follow my instincts for like who should be involved with which record. I can't say that, with which record. I mean, I love that actually, because I've never been that into pop music, but like I love like what Grimes is doing per se, because her music is on the, well, some of it's like kind of on the darker side, but it's also like in the pop realm, you know, so it's like fun to listen to, but has darker feelings and themes to it. One of my main like just simple tricks that I use is I have a lot of old dictionaries, because I like collecting old books, and like if I'm thinking about a song title or just like a theme or an album title, I'll usually look up those words just to kind of like find some old definitions. Like for Birth of Violence, I looked up the word violence because it felt like a maybe dangerous or negative word to use, but I looked it up and I saw the definition strength of emotion, and that for me felt very connected to the themes of like navigating the world as a woman and maybe being looked down upon for being an emotional being or something like that. But instead like owning that and like finding strength in that. And I mean, there's so much violence directed towards women, and there always has been, you know, that it's also like, in that sense, I felt okay using that word in my own sort of poetic way. And yeah, for me, like I've always known that I didn't want to have children and really wasn't meant to be a mother, and like music was always my focus. But I do think that there's still a large number of people who think that like you're not really a woman unless you have a child or something like that, but that's obviously not true. So I did reflect that in the album as well. Yeah, I've always had songs on every record really that are what I call love songs to nature, because I'm just so in love and so inspired by nature. But yeah, obviously like for a long time that's sort of been in a state of attack and turmoil by us humans, and there's definitely some themes of that on this record as well. Out of my head, from high. People have said I have stage fright, or I've even said I have a stage fright. It's more like that's just kind of like an easy way to explain what I actually deal with, which is more like a a sense of claustrophobia or something. There are just certain nights and where like feeling I just like don't want to be looked at or something, you know? And early on that was very much a problem. And my way of dealing with it was actually to dress like a Victorian widow in mourning. And I would just, you know, I mean I still do obviously, but I would just wear like long black dresses and I would wear a black lace veil over my face just to kind of feel like I had this barrier between like the energy of the audience, because I just didn't know how to deal with it back then. And I've definitely come a long way since then, and now even enjoy performing at certain times. It takes me a long time to finish a song at this point, because if I'm working with other people especially, like I'm very involved. It's like I want to let them do their own thing, but I also want to come back in at the last moment and make sure that all the little sounds and accidents that I like are still there, you know, because things that I hear as sort of like magical, special sounds that should be there, sometimes other people just think of them as like something to discard that's like kind of fogging up the space or something. I probably drive engineers and producers crazy because I like have so many layers at all times, but I love all those little layers, and I love white noise, and I love like, again, having these little accidental sounds that maybe just naturally happen without me realizing it within my own voice, and I want to leave those there. And so, yeah, I think it's just kind of allowing the song to be what it wants to be at a certain point and letting go of it, even if you don't feel like it's, you know, perfect or whatever.